the shame, okay. Oh, that didn't any the song is our special. It's some trash delicious.
Today, a couple of new people have also arrived, so I want to welcome. I want to welcome you.
Oh, that didn't you going to die on the one go to Shana, some to Katata any Tandagi also Kiwangachi, you made that so called the shit and Kiwangamaga, Tandagi any Semdi Yelela, Semgamachi Gutan, any Libogati Yele de la Pamikutachi in Matu Saga, or Katangatu Tutanti Tinijigan. They are tiny punch, what is Chagua, the Lenjawati countries, Chare, Seajorati, any lady. Oh, that lady go and Tinigan Jawadu Chanitini, any Amatumini and Machina. Or Tambukiol in the Milan so but that some Makiol in Tamakaza, Sunjin Chipare, or Tinijini do your race, or want to Takasanti, but to Tinibas.
So what we were studying yesterday was that the fact that the mind, the substantial cause of the mind, is the previous instant of that mental continuum, and the substantial cause of the body is one's own parents' sperm and egg. But then there is a connection between one's mind and the body that we take on in a specific life, like the body we have right now. And we were looking at the fact that that connection is made through karma, through previous actions.
All of the Tirisha, Tinikata, or Tikanima, Mani, Tanda, any Puchunchu in a Kematani, any Najula Sobatia, the Tini Yungures at the Sokan Katachin, the other than this is Lopen, Maditinda, Maditinda and Lopen Tayan, Sigdoa, Kerab Sujibasanki, or Lopen Tiga, kind of song to the Chiba, that don't that Chiba is a Chictilla, Luin Tutub Sera Mebatang. Wambo nam jam lumbi rangshin chen kimata suwore timata tu sujang makten par kazi zawar stomber cheba tang nujun tongwar ani stomber cheba yang kari chere ti ta sarap pasha la kombin thuire se ota ti khasang ti kan dreshin do ta chikba do re shas ma kimata ti ani chulu ini top so kaya mena ya tini shinge mena ya ani haja wambo ji tum ni lu ni de pe ne kap timata ni 수직이 지금 남무고 아치는 소소원이 지금 지금 자야다 아니 동야리 되니 아니 좀 같이 안 줘야 돼. 처럼 가만 검차 뭐 해야 되기래 해서 어떻게 좀 봐라.
We also saw yesterday that the text explained that even a newborn baby or a calf, they immediately after birth know how to suck from their mother's breast, for example, even though they've never been taught how to do so. And this is what it is explained in this quote by Acharya Maitichitra, which says, "The ability of the mind is unclear, and the sense powers are dull by nature. Yet, immediately after birth, taught by no one, we make efforts to eat food or struggle to suck at the breast through familiarity gained in other lives." So here is explaining exactly what we read previously and what we explained yesterday. And it's that even though a newborn child has learned absolutely nothing, so no one has taught them how to eat or how to suck from their mother's breast, still they know how to do so instinctively. And Buddhist teachings explain that this instinct to suck from the mother's breast comes from familiarity from previous lives. So basically, they habituated themselves to this sort of action.
Oh, dindirisha. That dindig last bagata. Kyo hangama yupati yang rikpag keba chena keba mambu ji chen this is chanda mambu ji do the rembe kale chidang chani chona ani lobjong this Jurombuda ani tes things upon the which you che your hesitikala ani otini shas.
So these are some reasonings that try to prove, to demonstrate that previous and future lives exist. And there are many different reasonings, and we could go for a very long time. We could study this for a very long time and go very deep in order to establish properly that past and future lives actually exist.
Oh, tindi do resha te kyo ngama da chima yubi korla da tindi chine riba sinamudu tindi la tene duya jikdang tini yang shamba chi samdana kare kiawa ngama ngapchida kiawa ngapchi ngosum ji mangthongwa tigi ani mebare samni tini samna yang tinti kumidus kai sena ni rangi ngosum ko mangthongwa samgite meba yimba yo mare se laptu mare jo tu mare kare re se di tiram ngama ge mebo tagin thongtu ma chongwi riksar kimchi di gi china ga nitsar mambu ji sa dum thongtu chongwa di shi to bo song sha 통신바 니시 톱세디 가르시기 도세디 아니 ngama 아니 딱 ngaso 마람로 치바이나 롱압치 죽주 응원라 아니 단다게 아니 춘이 디 컴퓨터 도다 디니 아니 다디 디 에베드 도다 디니 라소가 춘이 아니 디니가 통용 메바 디니 투소 딩상 아니 다 미소 ngosum도 통이 디니 춤디 디 잘람 근디니 아니 토여 바다 투소 단당 빼 몸부도 디니 토여 바다 투소 아니 ngama 통고요 마티가도 디니 요 마레세 랍샤나요 치스틴데 아니 투비용아 요탕 아니랑 ngosum도 만통아 참 치고고 ngama chiba yo marese lamna tigan tik yo marese.
So it's true that we can try to establish the existence of previous and future lives through logical reasonings, but this is not actually the only way to establish, because it's not okay also to think that something does not exist because we just have not seen it. And this is what is explained in the text. And by the way, we are on page 8 in the second paragraph if we start from the bottom. And here it says, it is also unreasonable to think that past or future lives do not exist because they are not seen directly, for it is unacceptable to assert the non-existence of something merely because we have not seen it ourselves. We can understand this in this age of science and technology from our experience of seeing and hearing of many new external and internal discoveries of which our forefathers in centuries past were unaware. So here it's clearly explaining that it is not a valid reason to assert the non-existence of something, just that we have not seen it directly. To not have seen something directly, witness something directly, is not a valid reason to assert the non-existence of something, because here we see that now through the development of technology, we've made many discoveries of the external world, also of our internal body, and we know many new things that we didn't know before, and the fact that we didn't know them before didn't mean that they didn't exist. It just meant we didn't know.
Tanangbi jene tingin zu gombak tobji ta che tombo ya leba tang ta tindi che tombo leba minna yang kari yore zidi ngami pacha ki kiawa ngama nesu tembi mambu yo o ta tindi mambu songu du kaisana ta ti shungu na nek song tang cheba yina mani kari zidi tingin zin tindi gom gyani tingin zin jomni kari chawar zini tingin zin chen tombo lewa di wanshi juk 원시가 다운데 좀 있더니 기와 가마가 좀 마음을 통고요 봤다. 아니 기와 치마야 다 딘디들이 지를 깨루요 봤더니 딘디지 그래서 기와 뭐 치마 뭐 보더니 통야가 딘디네 트림 거랬더니 양 낭비 치고는 다르고 다니 곰다 띵이 아니 천 통보야 할 땡이 딘디지고 용거도.
Moreover, the text continues, there are many who have seen past and future lives upon reaching a high level of concentration during intense meditation in reliance upon the Dharma. There are also many people who, because of previous instincts, recollect events from their former lives. So here we have two other ways of or two other examples of people who are able to see previous lives and future lives. One way is through the development of calm abiding and meditative stabilization. And through that, the texts explain that we develop clairvoyance. And there are certain types of clairvoyance that allow us to see back to previous lives and also into the future and to see what future lives might hold. So this is one way. And it also mentions that other people, even though they have not developed these sort of powers that come from meditative stabilization, due to, it says the text is translated previous instincts, is actually from the awakening of previous imprints, it's not instincts, but imprints, then they can remember previous lives.
딘디레샤 다 띠문나야 다 딘디가 아니 거다 곰냠리 딘디가 때문에 원시 줘봐 딘디 소문나야 가리 용도 세디 가마 빠차가 빠찬 뛰게 에는 요사 딘디가 아니 개왕 가마 네서 뭐 마음보고 딘디 템바 딘디가 네서 마음보송도 양치 모자다고 그 잠데 톱적고 세샤지 그리 딘딘다고 아니 가마가 딘디 모자가 세송세한다고 당 다 딘디가 네서 마음보고 또 가마 미산 딘디지 영엘라 나라 나미 딘디요 이나 양아 딘디지 그 딘디지 시송 딘디지 세송세한다고 딘디가 세워진이 텐투게 뭐 딘디 용거요래 딘디라 때는 양 아니 가리요래 시디 개왕 한마디 여바당 때 개왕 한마디 여바 얘나한테다 침송거 되는 개와 치마디야 여바데니 레라우지나 하고 투어 딘디 단다 펜스 뭐부진도 손다 아니 개와 받지 너 디 개왕 없이 여바 샤고 서레스
This second way that we mentioned to prove the existence of previous life through the recollection of people that remember their previous lives due to the awakening of their mental imprint is actually a valid way to demonstrate previous lives. And if we're able to demonstrate previous lives, we're also able to demonstrate the existence of future lives. And it's the case of many, many, many people who actually remember their previous lives, maybe after a car accident, and they're able to say, oh, in my previous life, I died from a car accident, and my family was like this, and they lived in this place, and I was killed in such manner. And there are many, many people who can actually tell stories, and those stories can be corroborated and demonstrated to be true. So therefore, this would prove the existence of past lives, and therefore, if we prove the existence of past life, we'll also prove the existence of future lives.
다 딘디라고 용거도 대야마서 띵사 샘도 당가마 버거 라마 딘디 아니 뭐 가르스나 이야도 버니 바 라마 딘디 아니 지니 나 단다 마날리다 딘디 총체 딘디 나래 아니 끼온디 참발라 아니 지니 부디 계시 토와 참기 장고 코 칼라고 그러는 가 간규 라마스기 인세니 그런 거 니마 딱 봤더니 랍데야 아니 지니 아니 세주지디 원이 디 가주 라마디 임바티니 저르 부칭원데 지니 딘디 타타 마초네 겁라 딘디 총시 딘디 두스 손다 딘디 타티라 소바디 나나 펜초 마부친 두스
There are many examples, and one of them that is very close to us is one of a Tibetan Lama who passed away, and that Tibetan Lama was supposedly born in Manali, in the village of Manali in India, and the child, when he could speak, after he learned how to speak, he constantly repeated, "I am a Kagyu Lama, I am a Kagyu Lama, I am a Kagyu Lama." And so his parents, after a while, decided to check on that which his child was repeating constantly, and finally he was checked by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and in fact confirmed that he was indeed a Kagyu Lama. So, like this sort of examples, there are many, many examples.
딘디레샤 다 앞뒤는 벌라양 아랑게 끼왕아마 테니 디 뒤지 뭐다 유지 송고시 바다 다디디 벌라서 버거나리 야티니 그 가상아서 디 좋아지 간도 하나 시리 아니 라마 투고 딘디니 가르스나 코랑 원지 지디 잡아 코랑게 디 유체라고도 잘라 딘디 다다 가단 투불라 다데 가리 유체 딘디 옹고시 바다 나미 니츠 줘봐 소세 나마 니츠 딘디 줘봐 다기들라 나시리 나마 니츠 줘봐 딘디 몸부지 총월에 되나 아니 라리라 끼와 치마 니버 유비디 된시 니버 죽고스 딘이 맞sol다 니버 끼와 나마다 끼와 치마 쓰게 진두 요레스 요장 딘이 다티 니 끼와 갑치세야디 돈다치 니버 죽고도 세야 끼와 치마 돈다 다 끼와 나마 돈다 다 주야요 말이 끼와 치마 돈다디 단다 니버 나서 죽고도 세야 어디레샤스
Then the text says there are accounts of how long ago in India a Buddhist scholar debated with a Charvaka, a hedonist, and to prove the existence of past and future births directly to him, took the king and others as his witness, died and was reborn later to become Acharya Chandragomin. The next page. Also in Tibet, there were many who remembered their previous lives, and on recognizing people and objects from those times gave accounts of them. So here we remember that yesterday we were talking about the process of recognizing a reincarnated Lama and how they are presented with many different objects, among which there are some objects of their previous life, and sometimes due to the awakening of their own imprints, they're able to recognize which object was there or belonged to them in their previous life. Therefore, continues the text, as future birth certainly exists for us, we must establish a definite purpose for it now. So through these sort of examples, we can demonstrate the existence of past lives, and therefore establish a definite purpose for future lives. Because, I mean, establishing past lives is just for the purpose of establishing future lives, because we can do something about future lives.
딘디다 마음비가 아니 따탑 삼부지 죽고요나 따티 죽출 때 간데도 진이 죽고도 세데 디 죽출너지 대송하디 로 삼부 긴 꼼니 균군 세바당 다 균군마 세바지 메바치하다 유된 군다 유된 군된 신종이 탑란베고 송바레 땅 아쪽은 아니 저와 치마 마음반 남쪽에 돈다도 주원에 간데스 죽고도 세원디 주어디 간이선 나가르초를 아니 로 상부 마르초 줄라 로로텔 상보다 겐바리 마부치도 잡아 마부치니 단다 가서 아니 남비숑거나니 다니 제바이나 뇨몬도 숨제 도차 공동 마제라서 바 뇨몬도 숨세하게 딘로 마롱바 두자 템모토게 딘디그리로 마부치도 우스 딘디 양아초 줄라 양로 상보 랑식 마케온디니 잠바다 세와라서 바게 양 로두 상보 마부치도 우스 뭐또 소리디야 긴도 콤버체니 아니 가르세나 아니 가르치도 공도들이 견 탐체 마세바다 아니 요된 군다 담바시 주야라 되니 메시지 치고 그래지.
Yes. So if we have to do something about future lives, how do we do something positive for our future lives? And the text says, the way to do so is to strive in the means of becoming the embodiment of all good qualities, and through constant familiarity with a good heart, to exhaust all faults. Uninterrupted familiarity with the noble path in the past and future lives, or reliance upon a profound method in this very lifetime, is the means to sever the continuity of cyclic existence. So the cycle of birth and death need be experienced no more. So here it is saying that what we can do now about future lives is to try to develop positive, virtuous mental states, and to try to diminish and eventually eliminate negative mental states. And if we talk in a Dharma language, we call this negative mental states afflictions, the three main poisons. And these three main poisons are attachment, anger, and ignorance. And these sort of minds are what they stop the mind. They do not allow the mind to be calm, to be happy, to be healthy. They do not benefit the mind whatsoever. And trying to diminish these sort of negative mental states called mental afflictions, we also have to develop our inner qualities such as love and compassion, and try to habituate our minds with these mental states. And in this way, like the text mentioned, eventually we'll be able to eliminate all of our mental faults and develop all of our this way to benefit our future lives as well as this one.
딘디지리자 딘디티가라다 맞어 연된 군다 덴바식당 좀이 탑란베고나 연된 군 덴소나 아니 당아서 낭비 상지비 쇼니시나 연된 군 덴게 연된 탐체다 덴게데 아니 상지지 공방톱세 상지시아들의 딘디지 종알라 딘디가 따티 좀이 탑대 간든르지기 니 용거에 대시온디 디 좀이 타방 아니 개왕합시 균뜬니 람sam보라 콤버체바함스 개왕합시 개와 치면 mambo kia mambo ji 균이 아니 람삼볼에 야 콤버체니 칼레 콤니 아니 기원 데리 주마야 데 야르 콤리 로야당 첸디네 예체 되라 밑에서 두자 시부지 미 콘트로 차고 미니 지금 말아 지 뭐부지 된게 지나야 따도 소리 견 돈이 딘 지금도 되게 야보 문도 되견 돈이 갈래 아니 데리 도데 산초고 아니 요덴소 야콘 아니 아니 곰 요덴소 코니 콘데 야야야 빼니 어딘지 지니 밑에서 야보 주소 두어이나 아니 교치마데 텔 야르 탄투에 디교치마 치마데 버루치네 마타투니 요덴 탐진 종아 제유 바레스.
And in this paragraph, it mentions that we not only should we exhaust all faults, but also develop all good qualities, becoming, it says specifically, literally, becoming the embodiment of all good qualities. And in Buddhism, the embodiment of all good qualities is Buddhahood, is a Buddha. So a Buddha is the embodiment of all good qualities. And the method to achieve that is as the text mentions, the uninterrupted familiarity with the noble path in the past and in future lives. Therefore, we should habituate, we should familiarize ourselves with all of these qualities, with the path, life after life after life, and gradually improve our mental continuum, and diminishing life after life after life all of our mental afflictions, such as anger and attachment and ignorance. Be able to identify these mental states, these afflicted mental states as faults, and identifying those afflicted mental states as faults, develop our qualities life after life, life after life, life after life, and then eventually, like that, we'll be able to sever the continuity of cyclic existence, and then eventually achieve the embodiment of all good qualities, become the embodiment of all good qualities.
I have a question that he can explain something further, maybe, because you said something about imprints and instincts. So can he determine more about the difference? Because like the emotions, like anger, are there instincts, are there imprints? What exactly is the difference and how can we change them?
Let me mention something before. The word instinct does not appear in the Tibetan text. It's just an English translation. So conveying the term instinct in Tibetan is a little bit difficult because it does not appear. It actually does not appear in the text. So this is a Western interpretation of what the Tibetan says. The Tibetan just says imprints the whole time.
Okay.
So would you like to ask, reformulate your question in regards to imprints and emotions?
No, like the question was still like, in the Western psychology, we often say we have an instinct to be angry. It's like a natural thing. But Buddhism says it's an imprint from a previous life. So what would he define as the difference, and how can we deal with it differently? Because we often think we cannot work on anger because it's a natural thing in the West.
Okay, I'll try to convey that to Geshe. Lasso Geshe ta tamboti korangi triwagi ki korangi triwa karela dene yongi do lamna tanda pögegi da shungdi inji gürbe kabla ani konzo tanye chik peje danyora ani tanye chik da pacha git sabla konzo tanye shemba chik peje danyora ani didan jewe toba chik sason kain sena numchola nyomo kashi bena konjo bakcha denso sene ani chungi yeba konso dende zigi yo mareba. So ti ngazo ki migi rangshin semchen ki rangshin konjo saba di res. Che za migi rangshin konjo saba chi yuna konjo ti meba soya yo mareba. Che za ti tatsul min dawa ni yongi doa. Cho chine bakcha la dene konjo yongi do. Cho chine ani semchengi rangshin la dene konjo legido ane dinigi kyebar kirangi samsul la dinigi kyebar khare yus
라서 디 나랑 삼출 제바이나 제단 가상 아주 셈세야데 류단 셈닝이나니 셈세야데 토마종디 아니 종화가 수쟁게 류다보다 딘지라 때니고 버기니 랑싱 코르투용야지 메바 아니 코랑 그 셈 세리 그차 시바 인자 아니 코양 아니 균 가마치 바창다 땡지랑 녀버텐 용고 두 삼야 당아투고 다르구나 노투고 딘디지 용고 두 딘디 용자 아니 코 시바 셈 세리 딘디 그 카인 바데라 녀버드 코라도 균tumbe 녀랭가 녀랭가 주세남도 딘디지 ngamango도 손에 딘디지 라테니 케고 두 손타 mani pache karsana control siya to yang ngami pachala tini chong go dus yina ya nekap ken ramada to ki lipong ne tang to ki kashi tambore kyo de control chembo yo da to ya ngarma kyo ngami tene control mobu za dinge mitindi yina kyo chimala ya de dan tumba yungore samninga samtu ni to.
So, like I mentioned in the previous class, when the mind is first, the mind of the present life is established, so it comes to be. It's not that it's produced by our body, like we mentioned, because the body cannot be the body being physical matter cannot become the substantial cause of something which is actually clear and knowing. The definition of mind, of consciousness, is that it's clear and knowing, right? So something that is physical matter cannot be the substantial cause of something that is non-physical, which is clear and knowing. And I think that this fact proves that emotions such as anger, for example, must definitely come from previous imprints, because anger is a type of consciousness, and being a type of consciousness cannot come from the nature of our body. It has to come from something which is of a similar type, meaning something that it's also clear and knowing, meaning something from a previous consciousness, and therefore a consciousness of a previous life, and the imprints left of anger in previous lives. However, I do think that there are temporary conditions in this life, like for example our body. Certain people, through the chemical composition of their body, they can have the tendency to get more angry, for example, and therefore the physical body affect their mental states. However, I think that this is the result of, in previous lives, having been angry many times. A person who has habituated themselves with being angry many times, and then in the future life they take on a body which chemical composition tends to promote these sort of mental states.
딘디치 양지 디간 넘베 테스치 조이나 지당 아좀 미지가 담보 마키온데 제도를 아니 미 상부 시부지나 양 아니 칼레 아니 야케 샴바 트비토기 코로록바 투캬 모부 트비토기 미디 두캬 차도야다 양미 담보를 아니 마키디 담바 미 컨트롤 페 차워다 양미 가리나 차도야 차보 미 두캬로 컨트롤 뇽모 두서 mambo 용기 미지 이나야 치수 아니 다 지금 좀 가르쳐야나 그런 가래 조야 본 체바이나 딘디 떡기 아니 티 컨트롤 레라오 마키야다 아니 미 약고 찬도야 딘디 요장 아니 그 컨트롤에도 딘디 리보가 랑신이 그 담보니 끼디기요나 아니 그 리보니 저와들 시란 조요 말이 캬버루슈 땅거요 말이 파체 딘디를 때나 양고 아니 파체 시방한 마지게 윤다 텔코양 도서걸 내가 지는 코마 도야 용기 딘디지 Mendoza.
Then another way we can think about it is that a person can, at the beginning of their lives, be a very kind person, a good-hearted person. However, through meeting certain types of negative conditions throughout their lives, like for example, surrounding themselves with people with very negative mindsets, they themselves can assume these negative mindsets and become very angry people and unhappy people, and change a lot throughout their lives. And the same is possible the other way around. The person who at the beginning of their lives was a person who had a tendency to get very angry, to be very envious, who had very strong, the three poisons were very strong in them. Through different types of conditions, like for example studying or surrounding themselves with very good-hearted people, they themselves can become very good-hearted people. And I think the fact that we can change ourselves, and we can become different people, demonstrates that it's not our nature in a way, it's not our instinct to be angry. For example, our afflicted emotions are not our human instinct, but rather is something that comes from imprints, but that can also be changed through with work of our own mind.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Now I would be interested in what the Buddhist view is. What is more important, the imprints from the previous lives or the socializing, the environment we grew up in this life? And I understand that the environment we grew up in also has to do with our karma, but is it like a 50-50 relation? Is one much stronger?
투지체 기실라드나 키랑숨바딩 알라펜토선 투지체 다 지원이바디 안에 다 남베슌 다 남베슌기 삼수 카레레스 카인세나 ngazo 개왕 아마기 바차여레바 개왕 아마기 바찬 개와딜라 슈긴 시보 테기레스 이나양 ngazo기 코류다 로바 카레 수이민다 디양 렐라테네 용기 여방야 하고선 이나양 띵아졸라 슈긴 양태기도 ngazo 코류다 미다 로전 슈긴 태기도 슈체시 단다 슈긴 태긴 슈체시 카레레 개왕 아마기 바차레 야메나 개와딜라기 코류다 미다 로전 슈긴 슈체시 카레레스
yeah. Tati shuken chesho de su de let ngamani mambuchi sa pacha mambuchi yore pacha mambu pe mambu sa sha yore ya pacha mambu sa sha dula duga pacha pe mambu sa sha du sanga tu thamal yore ta le sena chipare ati sa sha du seni ina ya digo tindi le chuni sa menge ji tanda ani ken garin chena yo mindu te ina ya 아니 레다 바차들이 사셔야들이 단단 아니 갑도고 깽 가르 좀 채용나 띠기도고 거기도 줍도고 줍용고 요다 아니 가르 갑도고 아니 깽도 됐어 주야를 갑도고 줍지가 윤로 대간도 삼다나 수 깽들이 지기 요반도지 아니 윤이야 삼다나 이지미지 레도 고도 어떤 일이 오지만 더
Konda gisila yange chiksuru na sepo gotsuma taledan pacha di mambo yore yina yang gen tenzo mena ani pacha di setuyi mares chesan gen di zo re suimbes
때리래 수 깬될 도구도 간서 레트다 코 잠마다 야 누가 몸부시 사샤요 레시 사요다 아니 야던 체디 야레드 세니 마철 야디 용구도 망쳐지 누가던 체나 안 누가디 게 마마쳐디 몸부 투용구도 실라
That's So I think of it in this way. It is true that we've accumulated an incredible amount of karma, like inconceivable amount of karma, because we've acted in infinite ways, positive ways, negative ways, which means we've left infinite imprints in our mind, positive imprints and negative imprints. However, there is no one who comes to also not however, but also there is no one who comes into this life with free of karma, free of imprints. That doesn't happen. So which means that we've accumulated this infinite amount of imprints, positive, both positive and negative. However, what determines what types of imprints awaken are the conditions of this life. So for example, if in this life we encounter many negative conditions, it is likely that our negative imprints will arise sooner. And if we encounter many positive conditions, then our positive imprints will arise and awaken sooner. So in a way, if we look at it from the point of view of what is the major, of what is a direct what directly influences us is the conditions and the environment of this life, because that is what has the power to awaken specific imprints of previous lives.
Ola so tanto di kan tini mantru ni keche tes chi shuwache kare se di ani tanda kend mantrina da ani le ge du kar sa sha na ti tribu devata dunga di yon tu mares tanghatsu ani kantar ani doba ngaso chong goya de kar go du sena devata chong moga de kar dunga de shas seni ngaso ani ta ti sonda dewa gi gyula ani gewata mambochi drupdena yang 다 주마 저 주마는 말리 온데 담아 낀다 많잖아 아니 겨 먹으사나야 아니 코 팬토문도 와 삼삼도 딘디 용거 요디 티가레레세나 야 아니 겨가 막 겨도 뚝씩 전부 쉬우지 줍샤요나 아니 디가 빠샤도 하장게 슉 전부지 요나 디가 그양 소소지 제사 롬바테 두아나를 차요나야 코로나를 지금 랑신게 지금 코랑 kiến 데스 야고로 트네 코랑을 야고 총디야지 롬바 교부 시부 몸보다 딘디나를 양 가시 양디 적변조리나 가리나 삼루그 리포트비나 가리나 야고 용야 진도 아도서 가리스디 교황마들라 레드 슉 전부 똑 전부 야보지 사투야 kiến 삼야 어딘디 도스
And in relation to this, I want to explain something else, and it's that if we do not encounter the specific conditions, the result of either happiness or suffering will not arise, even if we have accumulated the cause for that happiness or that suffering to arise. And what we wish for is happiness. What we do not wish for is suffering. Therefore, in the hopes of experiencing present and future happiness, we must practice virtue, because virtuous actions are the cause of happiness. However, even if we practice a lot of virtue and therefore accumulate lots of positive imprints in our mental continuum, if in our future lives we do not encounter certain types of conditions that activate that virtue, those imprints left by virtue, then that happiness will not arise, and then we might think, well, then there is no benefit in practicing virtue. However, this is not the case, because we can see examples in this life of people who, for example, have practiced very strong virtue in previous lives, and due to that, even though in this life they are born with not very positive conditions, maybe they are born in a very poor place, but even though they are born in a very poor place, they themselves have a lot of wealth. Or people who are born in a place where they do not have the opportunity or the conditions to study and to develop their intelligence, and around them they're surrounded by people who are not very intelligent, who are dull, and however they have a very strong, a very sharp intelligence. So this is the power of their own virtue that needs a very, very small condition to arise for them to experience the benefits of the virtue that they've previously practiced.
올라서 디코티니지 티니 단다가서 단다 디고니 마드선 도사기 탑지네 틴 종이 탑대앙스 교황합시 이긴튼니 아니 람삼보 콤버체바암스 다 교황합시 모부지 람삼보 디야 콤버체니 아니 요덴 탐제다 덴바치 용야 디치아지당 양나스디 탑람 셴바치라 탑사무시라 테니 쳔디랑라 니 코알 킨치 모고비 쿠이균 쳔니바시 자구소 somebody 나타티 가르치디 단 남비 중근나니 난추네 somebody나 아니 단다 아는 가고리 유팔친 태바다 티니 주고 상하 그 람니도 티니가나니 단다디 양나세 탐 사무실라 티니세 사무디 파제 상하가람 상하가람 사무티니 질라테니 아니 하장게 아니 안디 쳔베스 쳔바이나 아니 쳔디랑 아니 거리지네 콜 키와다 아니 치와라서 베딩마티네 모고케게 타바투비아당 아니 쳔디르 상지 콤보토바 딘디 양 쳔두 손탄 딘디지 제고그레 세티 손샤.
Then once again, the text says that what we need to do in order to guarantee the benefit of future lives, the happiness of future lives, is uninterrupted familiarity with the noble path in the past and future lives. So to habituate our minds with virtue again and again and again, with the path, with the Buddhist path, in this life and in future lives. Or, so it offers here another method, reliance upon a profound method in this very lifetime is the means to sever the continuity of cycling existence, so the cycle of birth and death need be experienced no more. And here, when it mentions reliance upon a profound method in this very lifetime, we have to distinguish two vehicles. There is the causal vehicle, and there is the resultant vehicle. The causal vehicle is the vehicle of the perfections, And the resultant vehicle is the vehicle of Tantra, is the Vajrayana path. And here, the profound method that allows you to achieve Buddhahood in this very lifetime is the Vajrayana path. If we practice intensely and making a lot of effort. So here it's referring to this.
나서 tintakama chonga jibje josumda madal hamdu dilian toa chamba toa tilinche yona toa tilinche nasi.
That's all. So now we have only 13 minutes left. Would you like to ask some questions?
I mean, just shy or you don't have questions? They don't have to be related to directly to what he said.
Whatever question you have, whether it's in relation to this or anything else or any doubt you might have, Geshe will answer any question.
Yeah, please. Can you go to the laptop? Thank you.
I have a question, and it's about making the right company, or as mentioned earlier, that whoever we surround ourselves with will have sort of impact on us. So how important is that to recognize, like in terms of people who we surround ourselves with, how important is it to say, to have those relationships or not to have those relationships?
Okay, thank you. Geshe khurang ye chwa dire. Ani daye geshe la ngazu ani tambo semba sambo che. Tene tro nyemba da nyando jo. Ani soso yang ta semba sambo di meba cha ani soso yang kondo da nyomo shucheru joya yorewa.
No.
Cheza tanda trobo nyembagi tiwa di trobo nyembagi korla res. Ani trobo nyemba da nyando majoya di kelchelu res. Kechembo beyo res, yamena kechembo shira yoma res. Ani trobo di.
Ti toya kupendo tuje deni karesena ani ngaso nambigi shonga nana sona dibi topo ta keji samya mandwa jichi seni tindik molam jagda tindik songa yore dibi topo on the mandwa chigwa de kechembore chita kechembore ani ko dibi topo ta kanji chaga yomete tachi cheni kola keba cheni ako dibi topo de sedi nichi muchi kola gyari gyaya ta kola kamataya andi chego dindi vingi ba yomaresi tab zamboji ki teni kola kale cheni domo go tabshi cheni ta rings tani dibi topo da mondwa chego ate kechimbo resi kaya sena dibi topo da ndosha di ku ani jakyo momboji ki ken cheni soso ani dubu nari gyoro shago yore sonda soso dubu dunga yongaya de ngasu tamba mudo ba yimbata soso diki gu yore tir marawa chandu gu resi sonda ani dibi topo da mondwa kechimbo resi.
In general, in the Dharma, we speak about the importance of not surrounding yourself with unvirtuous friendships. So we call them unvirtuous friendships or unvirtuous friends. In general, it's very important, and even we have prayers. We pray so that we do not encounter unvirtuous friends. So in general, it's very important. But at first, it's important to investigate the person and to be able to establish whether that person is an unvirtuous friend or not. But even if it is, if we consider that person an unvirtuous friendship, we do not, that doesn't mean necessarily that we have to have a conflict with them or fight them or get angry with them. In a way, we should just slowly try to get further and further away from that person. So see which method which method we can use to get further away from that person, because surrounding yourself with such types of unvirtuous friendships will result in you having to in you experiencing negative experiences and also experiencing suffering, and negativity and suffering is that which you do not wish for. Therefore, it is better not to surround yourself with such an unvirtuous friendship. So we can say that it's quite important.
Relating to this question, what would he recommend to do when the person is someone that we cannot draw back from? Let's say it's our parents or it's work colleagues and we cannot just quit the job. How would he then deal with this?
Ta tayin chewa di dan jewe chewa nyeba di tamsan la dikbe trobo ane ngazo dikbe trobo tang khaje thugiyo mares khain se tha ringru do thugiyo mares khain se na tamsan la dikbe trobo di peche yang ngazo phame yang cha sigire bas ngazo phame yang dikbe trobo dawo cha sigire yamena ngazo lega la lero denzo khashi gi dikbe trobo yang yin sigire dedu ngazo lega tamsan la ane 샤투기요 마레스 아니 파마얀다 카제투기요 마라스 데두 나저 카레 체나 펜사레스
레레레 다틴디 께 몽보지 께 몽보드니 트야요레 다치고 코다링보진 데고나 탑시 메교로 소소치기 레갈레사 레콘드진 로디네 티네게 레로크 다틴디 몽보치나데 야틴디 요나 다티 샤니 도고나 야 탑시 메반도 틴디가 강게 몽보 용고 요레 얘네양 다 탑시 찌기 요야 데까지 요레스디 딕비 쪽보세 디 자위찬이 넘버 3 비종이 셰바다 추기 냠는 제당간이 셰바 얘네 거기 미치는 다시도 딕비 쪽보레세니 딘디 용고요 말이지 원이 추기 냠래 약보지 제톤에 소소 삼로 약보지 땅투나 아니 코텐텐가 아니 거기다 딕비 쪽보도 야 쪽보 야가 차야 요레지 가인세나 미 컨트롤 란딩게 지금 조바 검tum나 조바지 검바이나 아니 소소 조바 원이 체니 바지 냠네 야고 차니 미 소소 이때디 야고 차투야가 딘디 낀치 요요레스 얘네야 다도 소그 제로 몽보지 드로고디 디스칼레 요레스 딘디 지문도
You're right. There are certain situations that we can find ourselves where we can do nothing about having to be close to an unvirtuous friend, whether it's someone within our family or someone at work, and we can do nothing about it. But I think still there is always something we can do about it, because in the Dharma and the Buddhist teachings do not assert that anyone, no sentient being, is 100% an unvirtuous friend, an unvirtuous person. No one is inherently unvirtuous, which means that that person, in a way, can get better and better, so they can go from being unvirtuous to be virtuous. That's one thing. And the second thing is that depending on our level of practice, if we are very good practitioners, we can use any condition to transform it into a practice. So if, for example, a person is, if someone at work is constantly angry at us, this is a perfect opportunity to practice patience. And if we're able to practice patience, then we will really fulfill the definitions of patience, of a patience practitioner. So if we're able to practice, then we can also transform these difficult situations into opportunities of practice.
딘디다 양자치 카르두스나 다딘디 레콩 냠도 레가칭에다 딘디게 리 아니 네캅치라 코단 테고나 디 카다림 부진 데고나 탑시 맹게 딘디 있나 아니 소소 원이 삼다니 코 미디니 쩐쩐지 임바 하고야다 그 쩐디디 지금도 또 논트 임바 두 소소가 하고 투바 있나 아니 소소 마두자 참으로 펜토요레 손자 파쇼디가 페나 자리 저기 컨트롤 사부지나 컨트롤 셔라 사부지 코치 콜레셔라 지 레카치야디 체라모도 젬바 콜레셔라 지 라비아당 가리나 딘디셔라 마지야치니 딘디 컨트롤 메와 가야 탑시다 딘디다 양 코치 아란도 몽보토도 자징게 지나 콘통야 아라딩게 통면야선 담으로 그 견디 야고지 소소 원진제 토와이나 소소 델 문주야 펜토요 지레스.
Then something else we can do is that we can use this opportunity to identify those characteristics or behaviors of that person that we think are not of benefit and that we don't like, and or that are harmful, in order for us not to do precisely that. So if we see that a person is constantly arguing and getting angry and not doing their work properly because they're constantly getting angry, for example, and they're being impatient, then we say, oh, this person is being angry, impatient, and this is of no benefit, and it's harmful for the environment and for the rest of us. So I'm not going to practice this. So identifying the negative or the undesirable behaviors of another person can help us not to engage in those same behaviors.
어디 가서 남자 균등 그 무체나를 개침보지 가두이나 용돼야지 개침보지 가르두세나 지금 내가 제단다 자와 제단 미션바지 장장 많이 소소 내가 일이나 논치다 균 얻음도 따니 가서 균지 여바이나 균도 여바 하고네 아니 갑자기 유라 줄주다 맞투나요 균 임바지 하고 뜨는 원진지 두바이나 아니 갈래 균도 녀를 두그래 맞도 균도 하마고나 아니 강에 몸보식되게 연구도스.
And this is very important for our lives in general, not to always focus on the faults of another person and what another person does wrong. We have to focus on our own faults, because it's our own faults we have to try to change. So by having someone around us that is difficult or that has difficult behavior or undesirable behavior, instead of continuing to focus on that person, we can use that to identify our own faults. And then even if we cannot change automatically or immediately one's own fault, we can start by identifying it, and slowly, gradually, we can start to change it. But first we have to be aware of our own faults. If we're unaware of our own faults, then there is no way to change it.
아니 셈바 좋아요나.
We have a couple of minutes. Is there any other question?
매바이나 아니 단다 받친디 가서 단다 디뎁그나 마트디아 디초이나 삽진로제 데센로제나 치지 추치고비 좀세 세안로 테레샤 다 주마사 파사나 가도 치치고비 좀센세 단다 받은 로샤 도도로제네 dom체네 마 아니 내가 전에 제고 좀센데 디니 개침보 디니지나 누구세야 디니지 콜렌디시자 인시 아니 티링은 로텐데 타라 주도치나 디도스 나서.
So since there are no more questions, we're going to stop the lesson here. And we finished the first chapter, the chapter on the importance of religious practice or the practice of a spiritual path. And on Friday, I'm going to do like going like bullet point by bullet point, the main parts of this chapter. I'm going to go through the main parts of this chapter, and which are the most important parts that we must remember on the importance of religious practice.
아니 참아 드리지.
Very much, everyone. Bless Geshe-la, 투지체.
Geshe-la.
그렇잖아.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
See you Friday.
Okay,
Friday.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
oh, okay. Let me do that. Second shot to the.
No, you have to. Yes. And now? And
All.
yes.